Welcome, everyone. I'm Paula Shapoulis with the Brainerd Lakes Chamber. I'm the director of the Blue Ox Business Academy, and you are at one of our success series called Attract and Keep Your Best Talent. We are on part 3 of a 3-part series, and we're super excited to have Kristen and Aaron with us again, Kristen Ireland and Aaron Meese with People Spark. And they are the founders and are human resources experts who know that simple, practical HR processes can boost a company's bottom line and increase profits and margins. So they and their team work together with small business clients to implement smart systems and create a thriving company culture where everyone has shared values and goals. And today we also have Laura Stromberg with Pequot Manufacturing and David Cowell with Cowell Financial to share some of their best practices. So at this point, if you have any questions, you've all been with us before, you can put them in the chat and Kristen and Aaron will take it from here. And thank you so much for being here today. And thanks for participating on this success series with us. So welcome, and we'll kick it over to Kristen.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Welcome back to all of you. I would love to hear in chat as we go forward, how many of the 3 sessions have you attended and or watched? So if this is your first one, type 1. If you're on this one, so everybody should at least type 1 because you're all here. If you have either watched or seen on a recording the other ones that we've done, I'd love to hear that as well. Oh, boy. Yay, look at how many 3s are coming. That is awesome. Some of the content that we're going to go through today, we will double back and you'll see how it connects to some of the other information that we shared earlier. So in our 3-part series, the first session really focused on one tool that you can use to really market to your ideal candidates, right? Your ideal employees. So how can you differentiate yourself in the market and find those employees that you want to have in your business, those high-performing employees? So we talked about one simple tool that you could use. In the last session, we delved deeper into the interviewing process and talked about how do you, even in a tight labor market, when people feel the expectations kind of like, hey, you have a pulse, we'll take you. How do you keep those expectations high, even in a tight labor market, so that you can continue to hire and set those expectations for high performers? Today, we're really focusing on, great, now you have them. What are you doing to keep them, right? And there's this, when everything is going on externally, there's a lot of focus on like, I got to find people. So we're starting to focus externally. And then all of a sudden there's that panic moment when one of your strong employees, one of your high performing employees leaves, right? Of like, no, there's that moment of panic. And so this is starting to think about what can you do to retain those high performing employees? So that's where Aaron and I will jump in today. And so excited to have David and Laura here as well, because I mean, I'm biased. I think the information that Aaron and I provide is pretty cool because we're total HR geeks. But really where the rubber hits the road is how businesses are really starting to implement actions and simple practical things that you can do every day to encourage your employees to stay. So while we'll cover some stuff at the beginning here, I'm really excited to hear from both David and Laura in how they have really engaged and retained the employees that they have. Aaron, any other information or anything else before we jump in?
No, I'm excited to get started.
We're going to talk about, right, your high performing employees are your rock stars. So you will notice the rock star theme as we go through all the pictures today. That's where I was at when we were putting this together. So first, I would love to hear in chat, because you know that Aaron and I love to have people participate in chat. What has the most impact on employee retention? So when you think about the things that can impact whether or not an employee stays with you, stays with your business, what do you think has the most impact? mission, management, right? You hear those quotes of people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. Communication and transparency, feel valued, trusted, recognition. Oh, goodness. Yay. I love these, right? The value, the trust, the recognition. You all get bonus points in these answers. What we tend to hear when we ask this type of question is around, well, they need pay and they need benefits. And you hear that a lot more now. In fact, recently I was watching, there's a new Amazon commercial about the kind of benefits and perks that they're providing to employees. When really what the research shows is it is deeper than compensation. It's not just pay. It's not just compensation. In fact, in many cases, those aren't in the top even 3 or 5 reasons that somebody would leave, that it's bigger, right? It's feeling valued, feeling trusted, being recognized, tying into the mission. So one of our favorite books, would you qualify this as one of our favorite books, Erin? She knows which one I'm talking about here already. So one of our favorite books is called The 9 Lies About Work. And there are 2 authors in The 9 Lies About Work. And they did a lot of research around engagement, right? Because your engaged employees are the ones that you'll be able to retain. Your engaged employees are your rock stars. And what they found in studying engagement survey results from that came from Gallup and from Korn Ferry, and they started to look at them all together, was there were 8 things that were disproportionately present in high-performing teams, right? So these 8 things came up more frequently, disproportionately, for high-performing teams, right? So, and what I love about this is it really allows you to focus on some engagement activities. So here were the 8 factors of engagement that they identified in this research. Here are 4. At work, I clearly understand what is expected of me. I have the chance to use my strengths every day at work. I know I will be recognized for excellent work. So, right, feeling valued, recognition, it's in there. In my work, I am always challenged to grow. And I'm enthusiastic about the mission of my company, right? So they value, Deb, you mentioned that, right? They value our mission. So really enthusiastic about the mission of my company. In my team, I'm surrounded by people who share my values. My teammates have my back, and I have great confidence in my company's future. So those 8 things show up disproportionately in engaged teams. Engaged employees will respond affirmatively to that statement. I'm really enthusiastic. Yes. I'm surrounded by people who share my values. Yes. So instead of looking at all of these things that we can do to engage and retain employees, we can focus on these 8. And to me, that focus, that clarity allows you more leverage, because if you try to spend time doing too many things, you won't be able to make sufficient progress in any of them, right? Now, here's the best part, because there are 8 and you're looking at these and you're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to remember these 8? Take a screenshot, by the way. They also broke them down into different categories, right? So they're kind of in buckets here. And in 9 Lies About Work, they talked about these 4, right? The ones that typically are starting with I understand, I have the chance, I know I will be recognized, I'm challenged to grow. Those are really the me experiences, right? The things that are focused on employees. The other bucket is really focused on the we experiences, right? It's about my team and the company and where we're going. So you can remember them more easily when you think about that in terms of what are the me experiences and the we experiences. And when we sat down to prepare for this session and connected more with Paula, David, and Laura, we started to have conversations about how this looked. And the great part is each of them are focusing on activities and actions in each of these areas. So it aligns so well. So as we talk about, okay, it's really great. I understand that it's important that somebody is really enthusiastic about the mission of my company. How do I do that? How do I create that? Or in my work, I'm always challenged to grow. Now, what do I do about that? So we'll continue to focus on these, But know that as we talk to David and Laura at the end of the session, a lot of the activities that they'll talk about fall into these two buckets as well. So with that, we are going to start first by talking about some me experiences and what you can do in these 4 categories to really make a difference. So Erin, I will turn it over to you. Oh, there was I missed my morph transition. Wasn't that beautiful?
Nice. Yes. So we're going to start as we start transitioning into some of those me experiences a little bit further. One question, and I'll ask this out in chat as well. What do you think are some of the more common responses that we get to the question, how do you know you're doing well? Yeah. So you see it in the actions through pay raises, pay increases. You see it in low turnover. Yeah. Your recognition. And Melissa, that's exactly where we're starting to head here. So what's interesting with this question, referring to other employees, Deb, I love that. Yes, right? So when you're doing well, you know that those we experiences even that you're building within your organization is translating because those really great employees of yours are referring others to come join them as well. So when we work with clients, we ask this question up and down throughout an organization. How do you know you're doing well? And on the surface, it seems like a pretty easy to answer question. And what's been really fascinating over the last 3 years is that we've started to see a theme when we ask employees, and this is from supervisors all the way up through executive levels when we're meeting with them. We tend to get answers that fall within one of 3 buckets. We tend to get an answer that's very just more of a kind of an awkward chuckle with not really much of a response whatsoever. We sometimes get a really sarcastic, well, they haven't fired me yet, so I guess I'm doing okay. And then a lot of times too, we'll get a hesitant, well, I mean, no news is good news, and they haven't told me otherwise, so I guess I'm doing okay. And the reason we start here with this question is that I want you to think about if you were to go ask your team members individually, how do you know you're doing well? What would they say to you? How do they know that they're doing well? So I'm just going to leave that there for a moment. And as we transition even into recognition, so Kristen, if you move just ahead, one of the tools that we found that works so well that we teach in almost every setting we can possibly find is around a tool and a framework to give better recognition and to give better feedback. And we look at this, and the nice thing is you can use it for recognition as well as for constructive feedback. And it's made up of 3 sentences. It's around the behavior. What is the behavior that I want to see continue? What it gets really specific. What is the impact of that? And then what do I want to see tomorrow? Like I mentioned, we use this for both recognition as well as for constructive feedback. When it comes to constructive feedback, although we're not going there today, the nice thing is it helps you take the emotion out of a situation because we're focused a lot more on what the specific thing is that employee did, not the judgment on that employee, but we're really honing in on the behavior. What I love about it for recognition is that the impact and the emphasis and the momentum that you can build simply through 3 sentences and giving recognition to some of your rock stars can be incredibly powerful, not just for your employee giving it, but also to be able to watch their response and their reaction when you're delivering that feedback. So I'd like to ask you, we're going to play with this a little bit and show you how you can put this into your own words and into your recognition with your team members. So what is your rock star employee doing? What is it that they do? And get as specific as possible. And we're going to play this out and talk through how you can build your own recognition.
Well, and Erin, can I jump in here? One of the things that I find 2 things. I changed my mind. I'm gonna make 2 comments. First of all, in these conversations that we have had as we talk to leaders and organizations and in even executive levels where we talk about how do you know you're doing well, there is a disconnect between what the business owners or the CEOs are seeing and feeling and what the managers and employees are. That in many cases, those highest leaders think that they're being very clear with their employees and they're walking away with a completely different understanding that they don't know that their employees, that their managers and leaders are giving those types of responses, right? That's an aha when we share that with them. And two, so that's the first thing. So when Erin asked you to think back about how would your employees answer that? There's hey, how would I think my employees would answer that based on my intent? Or how do they really feel if I were to ask them that? And then the second thing is, when we talk about recognition, a lot of times when we talk about recognition, managers will say things like, well, I'm just not a cheerleader. Like, that's not who I am. I don't think I have to, applaud and cheer when an employee shows up on time for work. When we think about recognition, this isn't about, if you are the cheerleader type, which I totally am, own it and be a cheerleader as you deliver the feedback. But giving recognition doesn't need to be a cheerleader activity, right? And that's what I love about this model, is really thinking about what behaviors do we want to see and continue to see, and how can we encourage people to behave in those ways? Mm-hmm. So there, I delved in. I got a little deeper than one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and with recognition too, a lot of times these opportunities are happening all around us, and we don't often take the pause. We don't often take the moment to recognize our employee for it, because things are going fine and it's not drawing our attention in the same way that a mistake or an issue or a problem would draw our attention. So a couple of responses in here. So our employee is really proactive, or that the client's need is the most important thing for them at that time. So I would say in both of these instances, we can even get more specific. So for proactive, it could be, I noticed that you were working ahead on products and projects that are due next week. For Chris, for the client's need is the most important thing for them at that time. How do you know that? So is it because you're seeing how they're interacting with that client? Are you noticing the questions that they're asking the client? Are you noticing how focused they are on that client in the meeting, and they're not distracted by things that are external in it? So get even more specific there if you can, because what your intent here is to help them see, help them understand what you want to see repeated. Sometimes if we do the generic, hey, good job, it's hard to know, okay, which part of it was good? Like, what do I need to continue to do? So if it's that I really noticed that you were paying a lot of attention, you asked some really good questions and were able to uncover additional needs for that client, right? You're asking a lot of questions. What is the impact of that behavior? And that impact is so what? Why does this matter? What is the impact on other team members? What is the impact on that client, on other customers, on the business? So I'll ask that question out here to the group as well. What is the impact? Let's take the second one here, where we have somebody who's asking some really good questions and is uncovering more information for our client. What is the impact?
And anyone can answer that. It doesn't need
It doesn't have to be just Chris. And Chris, if we were in a different training session, I could also tell you could pick somebody to go ahead and answer, right? Yeah, the client feels more valued. It's repeat business. This is why people want to work with us, right? That because we're asking the questions that maybe they haven't thought about. We're helping them uncover other areas in their own business. And then tomorrow is what do we want to encourage them to continue to do? And this one within recognition can be pretty straightforward. This is where our thank you comes into play. This is where we continue to encourage them as well and share how much we appreciate them. So if we put this all together, this is the formula. If we put this all together, it could be, hey, David, I wanted to talk with you about that meeting we had with our client yesterday. I noticed you were asking a lot of really good questions. And I noticed that you actually uncovered a few things for them in the course of that meeting. The impact of this, and you can use those words too, the impact of this is that I saw them leaning forward. I saw them really engaging in a way that I haven't really seen them do before. Thank you. This is what it means to really be living our values. This is really what we want to see from each member of our team. I appreciate you. So I use probably more words than what's necessary here. It could be very 1, 2, 3 in terms of your sentences. I encourage you really to think about 2 employees within your organization today where you could be giving recognition. And again, it doesn't have to be parade worthy. It could be they're doing their job. Maybe they're doing their job when you're short-staffed. And those are opportunities to recognize what is the behavior, what's the impact of that, and what do you want to encourage them to continue to do? And then when you deliver it and those words come out of your mouth, I want you to watch their responses. I want you to watch how they react to you. We did this with a client not too long ago and had them do some self-reflections. And these are some of the verbatims that came right back from them. So at first, they felt like it was a little bit clunky to start getting into having a framework to deliver feedback. But wow, I noticed that this sparked a longer conversation than what normally would have happened. I especially love the bottom right one, where this was a person that's normally pretty negative. And they went in, they talked with this person and gave them some recognition for a project that they had been on. And so while that person started off negative, even just his response overall started to improve, and we started bringing up more questions. And what was really fun about this is that in the weeks following this, that same team member continued to bring forward more ideas, more questions, and they weren't as defensive as what they had been in previous interactions. So your homework, I want you to think about 2 instances where employees this week, where you can be delivering that behavior impact tomorrow recognition, and even write it down if you need to try to remember it. Because if you can't mess it up, that's the best part about it when it comes to recognition. You can't mess it up. So we always want to practice here. All right, Kristen.
Well, and Erin, I would love to. So Erin, my intent is not to put you on the spot. My intent is to have you share what this can look like in the moment, right? So Erin, can you provide bit feedback to Chris for sharing his ideas in chat?
Sure. Oh yeah. So, hey, Chris, thank you for sharing your idea in chat and giving me an example of somebody who was doing a really good job in your business. The impact of that is that I was able to use that example for others to see how we can put recognition together. And it shows me how engaged you are in the conversation. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Erin is
okay.
Erin is a rock star at BIT. She is.
But you just get the flow, and right, you can't mess it up, because either way, you're still giving recognition, and it's likely going to be a little bit better than a good job. Keep it up. So we encourage you to get specific and to especially share that impact too.
Mm-hmm. And think about that, right? So here are the responses that Erin said that the people who are delivering feedback got. Think about how your employees would respond to that. If you said, thank you, good job, or you provided this is what you did, this is the impact of it, thank you, I appreciate you. This is, this is the type of participation we're looking for in a session to create a learning environment. So which one of those do you think your employees would want to hear more of? And what do you think the impact would be to your employees with that level of detail in your bit feedback? And that was an actual question. That wasn't a rhetorical question. I actually meant that as a question. What do you think the impact would be? Inspiring. they would understand their right, more engagement, know their purpose. And I can guarantee if they quit and go to another job, they're probably not getting that same level of inspiration or value from another organization, right? So it's what you can do to retain your employees. All right, we are going to actually come back and focus a little bit more on the me experiences, but we are going to tie this back to the one simple tool that we talked about on week 1. Does anybody remember what the one simple tool was? For those of you who have been on all 3 or on 2, and it happened to be session 1, do you remember what the one simple tool was? I feel like I need Jeopardy music, but I won't sing. Then I'd get bit feedback and probably not good bit feedback. All right, I'll let you think about that. I'm going to move forward because you will see them again. So this is another fascinating, what we find fascinating, statistic that came from the 9 Lies About Work book that we referenced earlier. People leaders who check in once a week on average see a 13% increase in team engagement. So those people leaders, those team leaders, those managers and supervisors who are checking in at least once a week, 13% increase in engagement. Ask questions. Yes. Bonus points right there. She got it. While those who check in only once a month see a 5% decrease in engagement. And I don't know about you. In a number of the organizations that I worked with previously, it was kind of the default that managers would have a monthly one-on-one with you, right? That was the go-to. Not only was that not a constant in engagement, but it actually drops engagement, where the concept of you're really connecting with employees, right? You're getting deeper than some of that surface stuff by connecting with them once a week is an increase in engagement. Now, what this doesn't say is that you need to have an hour-long meeting with every employee every week. That's not what it's about. This is about intentionally connecting with employees, which could be 15 minutes. It doesn't even have to be, a sit down in a room in some cases, but it doesn't have to be the hour-long scheduled, it is an intentional check-in. What we also hear from people is I check in with my people every day. So the other thing that this is not is the superficial kind of surface check-in of, hey, how's it going? How was your weekend? How was your kid's hockey game, right? That it's not at that level. It's deeper than that. And it doesn't have to be that super long, hour-long meeting. This is intentionally connecting with employees. And then what we hear as we talk about this, so the first thing we hear is, I don't have time for an hour-long meeting with every employee, right? That's not what we're saying. The other thing we hear is, I don't even know what to talk about. Like, what would I even say? What would I do? And we have some of the things that we have shared with some of our clients, or some tools and resources around questions that you can ask, right? Like, what are your priorities over the last 90 days or the next 90 days? What have you accomplished in the last 30 days, right? So there are some questions related to kind of work and the performance that they've done. This is also where it ties back to the simple tool that we talked about in the first week, right? So as you're having these intentional connection points with your employees, these are the questions you can ask. So you're sitting down with somebody and connecting with them. What do you like about your job? What are you least excited about? What frustrates you the most? What are you most excited about that you can't do in your current role, right? Or, now do these look familiar? Type yes, all caps yes in chat if these now look familiar, because these are the exact same slides from the simple one simple tool session. What skills have you learned? What skills would you like to develop? What types of recognition have you received that helps you, that you feel acknowledges the accomplishment that you had, right? So these are the questions that you can use to really have those intentional connection points with people, so that you can have those deeper conversations. And this is not you've heard us say, this is not process for the sake of process. We don't like process for the sake of process. This is not intended to be like, hey, I'm going to create a form and I'm going to sit down with people once a month and talk about each of these questions. We recommend keeping it kind of consistent and sprinkling a couple in every time. So you don't have to sit down and ask every question, but what are one or two that you want to focus on first? What are one or two that you want to move to next? So you're continuing to get that deeper information. And you'll also, now I have to double back and reflect on, I don't have it there. When you think about those me and we experiences, a lot of these tie back to those 4 me experiences, right? Because it's about recognition. It's about clearly understanding what's expected of you. It's about getting to use your strengths, which some of these questions ask about your strengths. It's about being able to be challenged and grow and develop in your role. We talk about development. So a lot of these questions tie back to those 8 factors of engagement, those 8 statements. Erin, what am I missing on that?
The only thing I was going to really reiterate was just not sitting down and just blasting right through all of the questions. That really takes away a lot of the impact for it. And so like Kristen said, picking one every couple of weeks to talk through with your team member, and even consider too, if there's one that you'd really like for them to really think through, give them a heads up. Hey, in our update tomorrow, I'd really like to have you think through and reflect on what skills you might have that we haven't really utilized, or what skills you want to develop this year. So give them an opportunity to not necessarily come in cold, but to give them an opportunity to really reflect before they sit down and meet. And it can make for a much more fruitful conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. So bottom line, what's the bottom line of all of this that we have shared? And I'm going to tie this back to the first few sessions as well, right? That really, it is important to differentiate yourself. You can differentiate yourself externally to your candidates. You're also differentiating yourself from other employees for your current employees, and really focusing on the things that you can have the most impact on, because the cost of losing one of your high performing employees is huge. So it's about what can you do to retain them? And it doesn't have to be a huge list of all of these things that you can do. You can focus and target on those specific areas identified in the 8 factors. All right, so I have 2 more slides that I want to cover before we jump into seeing how Laura and David have really had an impact on their engagement and been able to retain their employees. One of the things that we have found is that, because you'll notice Erin had a lot of those words right off the top of her head, right? That this is a habit for her to give that bit feedback. Those words come easily to her. So it's that having a helpful phrase to start in the process, right? So what are your key go-to words so that it makes each of these statements easier, right? More habitual, more of a habit to use. Now you'll notice, so these are the top 10 phrases that all managers should use. So we have compiled them. Not all of them are in relation to recognition. They are all things that if you shared these with employees would either make expectations more clear or make your intent more clear and create more recognition and engagement. So the first 2 here, let me be clear, this is not okay. This is when we're talking about clearly giving expectations. If somebody isn't meeting performance expectations, that those are 2 phrases that we have found helpful as HR business partners and managers working with employees, that it's okay to say this is not okay. That is a way to make sure that people clearly understand what is expected of them. Same thing with a let me be clear, right? Because what do you do when somebody says, let me be clear? Right? Oh, she's right. We're serious about this. My intent is not. You'll notice that Erin and I use those words. My intent is not are actually contrasting statements, if any of you are familiar with the book Crucial Conversations. But it's making clear what your intent is and what your intent is not, if you feel like somebody would misinterpret what it is that you're saying. So you'll notice I actually use these when I asked Erin to give feedback. My intent was not to put her on the spot. My intent was to have her share how quickly you can pick up on this tool and how easy it is to use every day. My intent is not. Say more about that or help me understand. Sometimes we don't ask enough questions or we don't get enough information. So even as you're asking some of these engagement questions that we had and somebody gives you a shorter answer, you can say, well, say more about that. Help me understand. When you say this, help me understand what you mean. What am I missing? And what I'm hearing you say is, this is actually a twofer. So as you're listening to an employee, what I'm hearing you say is, summarize what they said, and then following it up with, what am I missing? What am I missing in that? Yes, and a lot of times we use but in statements. And what happens when you use but in a statement? It's like when somebody says, I'm sorry, but, right? It kind of negates everything that you said before. So rather than using but, say yes, and, right? So if somebody has an idea, sometimes we move on to yes, but, or but, where this is a yes, and think about how we can do it this way. So start to think about how many times you use the word but during the day. It's a lot. And try to replace but with and or yes, and. And the last two really do tie to recognition. Thank you, and I appreciate you. And I appreciate you is one of my favorites because we usually say, I appreciate what you did. I appreciate that you did this, where this is really about appreciating the person for who they are. Thank you for whatever they did. I appreciate you. It sends a different message. So we have some of that information on our website. We actually have bookmarks. So if you're interested in a bookmark, reach out to us and let us know. We have our 10 phrases right there on that. With that, I am going to stop sharing so that we can, again, I'm biased. I think that the first part was fun and exciting. This part is going to be even more fun and exciting in hearing how Laura and David have really taken some of these concepts on their own actions that they've already taken that have tied really well with some of the things that Erin and I talked about here today. So Laura, I would love to start with you and some of the things that you have done. So first of all, if you could share a little bit more about your background and your business. And then second, when we spoke in preparation for this call, you talked a lot about the culture that you're creating with Pequot Manufacturing and how that has had an impact on your engagement and retention. So then I would love to hear, what are some activities or actions that you have taken to impact that?
Okay. That's a long question, or I might have a long answer to it. So my name is Laura Gorgas-Stromberg. I joined Pequot Tool about 2.5 years or so ago. Before that, I was a corporate finance recruiter for Robert Half International out of the Twin Cities. I got about 2,000 people jobs, right? So working with thousands and thousands of recruits. Felt really proud of all the placement that I did, but in the process of being a recruiter for 10 years, what I realized what was most important to employees was usually like what you're saying, like the top 8, what's figuring out how I'm going to connect said employee with a company that reflects their values. So when I started at Pequot Tool, I thought a lot about, like what would make me want to stay here forever? What would make me comfortable coming to work on a daily basis? And it really comes down to culture. So that has been my personal mission at Pequot Tool for the last couple of years. And luckily, walking into the company, it's a family-owned business. We've got excellent retention. A lot of our employees have been here for over 20 plus years. And that starts with the Gorgas family that owns it. So I was just taking like what their concept was of a family, a real family, and doing my absolute best to make sure that even the new employees felt the same connection as some of the old ones did. One of the things that our company did beforehand, before I got here, obviously, was we created like a roadmap. And when you talk about confidence in a company's future, aligning yourself with the mission of the company, the values. Our roadmap literally has 3 parts where it talks about mission, value, and how we're going to get there, right? And employee engagement, workplace safety, quality, service, all of these things that make a company successful are part of that mission statement. So I went straight into, like picking out a certain portion of every single one of those. The one that I chose that's closest to my heart was our giving initiative. That was the first thing I started with. And honestly, it lights our employees up on a yearly basis, letting them pick the different programs that they'd like to invest their time, their treasure, and their talents into was really a focus for us. The United Way is one that we participate with. It's close to everybody's heart, and we do the whole month of March as our food shelf donation month. So giving them something to have like extreme pride in, right? What sets us apart as a company? What makes you proud to walk into work every day? What reflects your values? What are you going to share with the community about what you did at work today? Do you want it to be about, like I'm a production worker and I loaded this part and I unloaded this part? Pride in that is wonderful. But when you can say I made an impact in my community and I'm proud of this because we all came together as our mission, that's why I feel like people are proud to work with us. So that's just one of the things that I've focused on. I've got a list of 17, so I'm going to stop talking right now.
I love.
Yeah.
Right. And what you're hearing here, and one of the things that we have seen a lot in conversations and themes is that intentionality of being very intentional of here is our roadmap. Here are the specific things that we are going to do to get there, and then creating these connections. And I heard, and some of this I'm bringing in even from some of the other clients that we've worked with, but we have seen clients who start to do some of the feel good stuff. You have it even more powerful of an impact because you're tying the feel good stuff to the business and pride in the business, right? It's not just an activity for the sake of activity. It is intentionally connected. So it is creating that pride in who we are and what our business means and what it stands for. I'm gonna put Erin on the spot again, because you also talked about employees being able to see how they can impact that journey. Erin, do you want to share one of your favorite statistics or most shocking statistics?
Yeah, well, I think there's a study that we found a few years ago that somewhere north of about 44% of employees don't know how the work they do every day impacts the business. And so there's that connection piece, Laura, that even, it's about here's what we're doing as a business, here's where we're going as a business, and here's how this business is impacting the community that we all live in and we all serve in. So continuing to make that connection even further outside the 4 walls of your organization.
Absolutely. We also do a communication portion on a weekly basis where our board of directors member, our president, or our CEO shares a little blurb of information. Maybe it's about our history. Maybe it's about a success that we had with obtaining a new client. Maybe it's a response that we got as a thank you saying like, wow, you guys knocked our socks off with this on-time delivery and we never expected it. We also feature a different department every week and different happenings that are going on throughout the facility. So I feel like they understand that on a daily basis when they get here, all of the work that they put forward really has an end goal and an impact. And that company-wide communication that we do on a weekly basis, I think everybody likes to read the newsletter because it's like, oh, what's happening in maintenance this week? Or there's a big machine move, or this is a response that we got from our client. And yeah, I was part of that job. I was part of that team, right?
So I'm going to ask you two, because you have a page of 17, which it's actually more than one page. We saw the notes. It's more than one page of 17 things, right? There you go. Which one has been the most near and dear to your heart?
Ooh, man, for my personal,
I didn't prepare you for that question.
No, actually, that's a really big one. And it was one that maybe I pushed a little harder when I got here. It's a no tolerance. No tolerance of bullying, no tolerance of poor attitudes. Everyone has to treat one another with respect and kindness. And, you know, for the most part, everyone does. But every once in a while, you kind of have a couple of people here and there that really push the envelope on what's acceptable behavior. And putting forward a no tolerance on that a couple of years ago increased my turnover rate statistic by 4%, because we kind of pushed a couple of people out the door that, you know, a lot of our managers were thinking, oh no, we can't lose that person. They're a subject matter expert. Nobody else can do that job. But what we found is when we stopped tolerating that behavior and let that person move forward with their career and maybe find something that made them happier and more satisfied, that the people around them rose to the occasion and were so much more positive and capable. In tandem with that specific no tolerance, we started a recognition program where employees can nominate other employees for a job well done and have it be a monetary value. They just have to write a short little blurb, put it in an envelope, give it to HR. It can be anonymous or it can be with the person's name on it, but it really shifts the focus of people from this is what's going wrong with my job and my life and my world at work today to, wow, this is what's really going right. That attitude, that positivity, I try to push it every single day. And I know that you say you don't need to be a cheerleader, but it really does help to remember that if you are a business owner, if you are in a leadership role, that if you're not a rah-rah kind of person, you can still encourage with tips and helpful things, and that recognition program, super helpful.
Awesome. So you also reminded me of one of our favorite quotes, which is culture is not what you say, it's what you allow.
Yes.
So you can tout this really great culture, but if you're allowing these behaviors, then that's what your culture is. It's the behaviors that you allow, the things you choose to walk by. Erin, what would you add?
I had something and it was really good. It was really good. I'm sure I'll think about it in a moment. Yeah.
So Laura, I had just asked you the question about which one was the most near and dear to you, to your heart. Which activity have you done that has had the most impact on employees, do you feel?
Probably back to letting them drive our philanthropic efforts. They get to pick. They are so involved. And it's not just donating to a nonprofit. A lot of times we have employees at work that somebody in their family goes into the hospital, or they hurt themselves on site, or they off site, whatever it ends up being, and they'll take up a collective on their own to support that person, and really we give them the power to own that and drive it. They do fishing tournaments, food benefits, all kinds of things, and that family idea is stepping out of the way sometimes and letting them take care of one another and just kind of pushing it in the right direction and helping them get there.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Of course.
So Kristen, well, the one thing I would add here, and so Laura, I think even in your examples, you had mentioned it was about the rah-rah, the cheerleading piece. I think what's interesting is that in so many cases, sometimes as leaders, we forget that employees and our team members are looking to us to know how they should respond to any given situation, right? So if they're seeing us recognizing others, if they're seeing us leading the charge, whether we're out there kind of being really rah-rah or we're simply encouraging and coaching, they know how to respond based on that. And I love the examples that you give here because of how you're setting that tone then for the rest of your team members to be able to follow suit in that way.
You're so right. Employees mirror their supervisor's attitude and work ethic and direction. And if you approach it with all positivity and a can do, I think that you'll get a lot more back out of that. It'll be reflected right back onto you.
For sure. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura. So David, so one of the reasons that I love having both Laura and David here is that we're coming from two different perspectives, a larger organization and a smaller organization, a manufacturing setting and a service setting. So David, would you mind taking a few seconds to introduce yourself and your business?
Sure. First though, I'm wondering if the folks on the call would mind sharing their camera. So if I can't see anybody, it's harder to just talk to a black box. So I'm just wondering if, there we go, there's one. There's Patrick. I knew that was Patrick. Hey, Deb. Deb, I just texted you.
And
Thanks for
David,
turning
you
on
can
our
be giving
camera.
them some really nice bit recognition because they've turned their
Pictures.
cameras on. The impact is you'll be able to better speak to them.
Well, otherwise they're all on their phones and on their emails. So,
Or in their pajamas. No big deal.
okay, well, maybe half of the people. That's good. I'm David Cowell. I own Cowell Financial advisory firm. I've been in business 22 years. I'm born and raised in Brainerd, 7 team members. And this is what I was put on the earth to do. It's pretty fun.
Wonderful. Well, David, I loved having the conversation with you as we were preparing for this session of really how you've been able to focus on your employees and the impact that it's had. Would you mind sharing some of the things or some of the actions you do to keep your employees engaged?
Sure. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is that I remind them, hey, Tyler, I remind them that working for me is not the most important thing.
Mm.
So I think that, I've probably had 90 meetings a month for 22 years. I've had like 22,000 meetings with business owners, entrepreneurs, individuals, families. And seems to me there's a lot of people that are kind of jerks. Now there's a lot of good people and nice people too, and sometimes they don't mean to be jerks, but it's like they don't realize that the person doesn't exist to work for them. Their family is more important than working for me. So I just remind them of that. Hannah kept emailing me week after week, asking me about all these soccer tournaments her daughter was in, and she had to leave early. Can I please leave early? And so I called her in my office. Hannah, I need to speak with you. So I said, Hannah, all those emails you send me about asking if you can go to Lauren's soccer? I said, I don't ever want you to stop sending those emails to me. I don't ever want you to feel like you're asking me too much, because the most important thing is your family. It doesn't mean you don't take what we do seriously and the impact we're having on our clients and our community. So we have really an other focused mindset. So I view myself as a servant to others. And so if you treat people, it's just the golden rule that we teach our children. I don't know why that doesn't get talked about that much anymore. So do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So another example might be meeting with someone who is an employee in town, and I say, when do you receive your annual performance review? And they say, I don't know. When do you usually get a raise? I think I'm like 8 months overdue. So how can you make financial plans for your family? It's pretty hard, David. So why don't you ask? Well, my boss is busy. I don't want to ask her. The owner's got a lot going on. I don't want to ask him. So that always really makes me mad. So our team members know they may not receive a pay raise annually, but they know we're going to have a meeting every 6 months, like clockwork. I've had a meeting with Hannah every 6 months for 14 years in a row. I almost have it on the day. If a raise is awarded, you will know that day. And if I miss the meeting by 4 days, I will back pay you to the exact employment anniversary date. And so that is what I would want from my employer is just to know, I don't know if I'm going to get a raise, but I know I'm going to have a chance to talk about it. I don't know if I'm doing a good job or a bad job. Actually, I do know if I'm doing a good job or a bad job because David's meeting with me and appraising my performance and giving me feedback and opportunities for improvement and all kinds of wonderful positive feedback of all the things I'm doing great over and over and over and over and over and over consistently and predictably. And it's a forum for them to talk to me, for me to talk to them. I am honest to a fault is what my father taught me to be. Honest to a fault was his phrase. I always, well, maybe not always, I'm not perfect, but we strive to do the right thing. And we instill that in our team. There's all kinds of gray areas. There isn't, in our world, there is no gray, there's right or wrong. We do the right thing. We don't do the wrong thing to make more money. We do the right thing. And if it means we make less money, fine, it's the right thing. We're honest to a fault. We do the right thing. We do what we say. And I set a good example. And we follow the golden rule. And we're other focused. And then we just rock it out. It's awesome.
I love how you tied it back to the rocket out, the rock star. Nicely done.
Yeah, thank you.
What is the feedback and impact that you've gotten from your employees on how they feel about that? What is the response that you're getting from Hannah and other employees? What's the impact?
Just devotion to our cause. So we have more people calling our office than we can help. We specialize in dealing with entrepreneurs, small business owners across the United States, and I just can't. So they have fulfillment of the extreme positive impact. So our mission is to like create security for business owners, which then retains jobs and creates more jobs. And so it's just rewarding for our team when we have people emailing them, thanking them. When we have people telling me, you have got to tell Hannah and Amanda and Kylie and Carrie and Michael and Parker, it's like, they are amazing. I don't know how you have them and how you kept them, but I wish I had them working for me. So then I tell them what people say. Mm-hmm. And I'm always thinking about what can I do? Like our mission, our philosophy is we take money off the table. They cannot work for another financial services firm and make more money than they make working for me. Meaning, like I'm taking money off the table. Like they earn more than they like they don't. It's like compensation is not why they come here. That's not seventh on the list. Maybe it's like third or second. It's really high up there. But they come here because there is a purpose, all the things that you guys have been visiting. You've heard all that before, so maybe don't have to go into all that, but just, so I'm always searching for something I can do to thank them for the work they do for our clients. I really try to not thank them too much for working for me. I try to thank them for the work they're doing for the folks that we help. And if we hit our goals, it's not thanking them for me and my business, but it's thanking them for the impact we're having on our clients. And so I'm always trying to figure out things I can do that are thoughtful, that go further than money. Hannah's daughter just got her first job. She moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which my wife and I, for a number of reasons, spend a fair amount of time in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. About twice a year I'm in Milwaukee, so we love Milwaukee. So Hannah's daughter moves to Milwaukee. So I thought, I'm gonna buy 3 gift cards to our 3 favorite restaurants, and I'm gonna send her a handwritten note card. I've probably never had much of a comment. I've been to her grad parties, but I don't know Hannah's daughter that well. She's like 23 years old. So I just mailed it today. And I told Hannah, and I said, don't you tell her, but she's going to get like this gift card. It's going to be these 3 amazing restaurants. And she's just going to be like, and so like Hannah thought, she's like, oh my gosh, you're just like, who does that? She says. So it wasn't very expensive. Like, I know that Laura, like they give out, Pequot too gives out, she said, Chris, like here's cash for the 4th of July. Here's $100 bill to go buy some cool fireworks. But like, I'm like constantly like thinking about how can I do something that would be not normal to show them that I care beyond just, I already pay them an appropriate wage. So anyway, I'm rambling on, I'll stop there.
You are passionate and I love it. And now, how do you think David's employees feel? Recognized, valued, and you talked about David, you know, it's not about the money and it doesn't cost that much anyway. That in taking the time to come up with those things that will be meaningful, that it isn't about the money, it's about who you are and the culture you have in your business. And I can guarantee that that time and money is a lot less than what it would be if you lost one of those rock star employees, which you won't because of what you're doing. So thank you very much for sharing. That was a very passionate speech. Erin, when we get off the phone, we may have to talk about what we're going to do with our employees. So Paula, I want to be sensitive to time. I will turn this back over to you.
Awesome. Well, I just appreciate both of you. And before we end, what I'd love for all of us to do is take ourselves off mute. Please take yourself off mute and let's give Kristen and Erin and David and Laura a round of applause and a woo woo. Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah, woo. Well done. Good work.
Patrick, the beer man.
I didn't know Patrick was the beer man. I feel like I need to get to know Patrick.
In person.
Yes.
You know him in person, right?
In person, Patrick
Everybody
owns
needs to know Patrick.
Jack Pine Brewery up here and one of our favorite places to frequent. So I just want to say a heartfelt appreciation to Kristen and Erin for this 3-part series. You guys rocked it out, keeping in the theme of this week. We will send out, I can send out the slides if it's okay with Kristen and Erin to send out the slides. I'm happy to do that. And as you know, we will have the recordings for all 3 parts in the Swell on Friday. And so you can go back and watch or re-watch or whatever you'd like to do. And I want to thank all of the businesses and organizations that are on with us today. It is you guys that strengthen our communities. And we so appreciate that here at the Chamber. So thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for being here today. And thanks to Kristen and Erin once again. Bye, everyone.